When you're packing a suitcase for a really long trip, there's always that inevitable moment of negotiation.
Oh, the zipper negotiation. I know it well.
Right, exactly. You stare at the zipper, you push down on the fabric with like all your body weight, and you tell yourself that you can squeeze in just one more pair of shoes if you just fold things differently.
Yeah, you try to bargain with the physics of the bag.
Yes. We constantly treat physical space as like a suggestion. We operate under this illusion that with enough effort or enough cleverness or maybe just the right packing technique, we can somehow stretch the boundaries of the container to fit whatever we want.
We do. We really think we can outsmart the spatial limits.
But then you shift gears and try to apply that exact same logic to the abstract concept of a day. And suddenly you realize that zipper will absolutely not close any further. The suitcase is made of, I don't know, solid titanium.
That's a great way to put it. Solid titanium.
Yeah, because there is no squeezing, there's no negotiating, and absolutely no folding time into a tighter bundle. The container is completely fixed.
It is arguably the most unyielding constraint in the entire human experience. Physics really does not care how hard you push, how clever your new scheduling app is, or how much you try to bargain.
And that stark titanium reality brings us directly to today's deep dive. We have a very specific and honestly somewhat unusual mission today.
Very unusual for us.
Our goal is to take the 24-hour concept, this fundamental structure we all live inside, and explain it to a complete beginner. But because you, listening to this right now, are obviously not a literal beginner to the concept of days, we're going to approach this as a philosophical thought experiment.
Right, a total reset of perspective.
Exactly. We need to strip away all our modern biases, all our digital calendars, our productivity guilt, and look at this as if we are encountering the concept of a 24-hour cycle for the very first time. We are adopting a beginner's mind.
Which is incredibly difficult to do, actually, because we are so deeply habituated to time. It's like asking a fish to critically examine the concept of water.
Yes, that is exactly it. And to help us do this, we are using a source text that is, well, it's unlike anything we have ever used on this show before.
It really is.
Usually when we do a deep dive, I come to the table with a massive stack of research, peer-reviewed articles, historical analyses, maybe a 1,000-page textbook on cognitive psychology. But today, our entire source material consists of exactly 9 words.
9 words?
That's not a typo. 9 words. They come from a text titled The 24-Hour Mandate. And the entire body of the text reads, you have 24 hours. Use them wisely.
It is aggressively minimalist.
So aggressive.
It strips away all the padding we usually rely on when discussing time management or existential philosophy.
So, hey, let's unpack this, because the real challenge today is understanding how such a microscopic amount of text actually contains this massive foundational framework for understanding human time and human psychology.
Well, we really have to start at the very top. Before we even get into the 2 sentences that make up the text, the author chose a very specific framework just for the title, the 24-hour mandate. Right. And that final word fundamentally changes the psychological posture a beginner needs to take when they approach a daily cycle.
The word mandate carries a lot of gravity. It's not a word we use lightly in everyday conversation. I mean, you don't issue a mandate for what to have for dinner.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the point. What's fascinating here is the deliberate linguistic choice to avoid softer terms. The author did not title this the 24-hour suggestion or the 24-hour observation.
Or the 24-hour opportunity.
Right, exactly. In historical, legal, and political contexts, a mandate is a binding directive from a higher authority. It is an official commission to do something. It cannot be passively ignored.
So it shifts time from being just the backdrop of our lives into an active assignment.
Yes.
It's the difference between a friend casually suggesting, hey, you should try going to the gym sometime, and a commanding officer handing down a direct, compulsory order. One is a casual offering, and the other demands immediate execution.
Precisely. And for a beginner trying to grasp this concept, framing time as a mandate interrupts what neuroscientists call the default mode network of the brain.
The default mode network.
Yeah, when we view time as this endless, rolling landscape, our brains conserve energy by essentially sleepwalking through it. We default to passive consumption.
We just drift.
We drift. But by calling it a mandate, the text forces a cognitive jolt. You aren't just existing within a day, you are being tasked with one.
But hold on, if we are adopting this beginner's mind, I have to ask, doesn't framing our daily existence as a strict mandate risk inducing massive anxiety?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, because if I am just starting to critically examine my relationship with time, telling me I'm under a binding order seems like a recipe for instant burnout.
Well, this raises an important question about the utility of anxiety. We often view all anxiety as negative,
Hmm.
but in this framework, that pressure is a feature, not a bug.
Really? A feature?
Yes, the text is leveraging a concept known as eustress. That's positive, mobilizing stress. A beginner sleepwalks through time, precisely because they view it as a renewable resource. So the sudden weight on the chest you're describing, that's the text doing its job.
Wow.
It is meant to shatter the illusion of an infinite tomorrow.
So it's literally yanking you out of that passive river and forcing you to stand at attention.
Yes. And because we are dealing with a mandate, we have to look closely at the actual parameters of the order we're being given. What exactly are the constraints of this assignment?
Which brings us to the first sentence of the actual text. 4 words. You have 24 hours.
It's a statement of objective physics.
Yeah.
And for someone adopting a beginner's mind, this sentence establishes the ultimate equalizer. Think about the language. It is a declarative, factual, absolute. There are no caveats.
There are no asterisks, no exceptions for good behavior.
No extensions granted for extenuating circumstances either. It is a hard, hard boundary.
And what really strikes me here is how it completely ignores the reality of human inequality. I mean,
Yep.
we live in a world where everything is asymmetrical.
Everything.
Wealth, status, geographical safety, physical health, all of it is distributed wildly unevenly. But this text looks at a billionaire CEO and a struggling artist, and it issues the exact same immutable decree. You have 24 hours.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a profound cognitive bias humans have regarding time. We constantly fall victim to what psychologists call the planning fallacy.
The planning fallacy, let's dig into that.
Sure. So because our brains evolved to estimate and manipulate physical space, like organizing tools or building shelters, we subconsciously try to treat time the exact same way.
Like the suitcase analogy from earlier.
Exactly like the suitcase. We think we can stack tasks, compress them, or stretch the hours if we just pack the suitcase more efficiently.
We think we can outsmart the clock.
We really do. But time doesn't behave like physical space. A much better way to understand this constraint is to look at a computer's RAM, its random access memory.
Okay, I like this.
You might have a massive hard drive, which represents your long-term ambitions, your lifelong goals, your endless to-do lists. But your RAM is your daily 24 hours.
It's the active processing power.
Right. And it doesn't matter if you have a terabyte of ambition stored on your hard drive. If your RAM can only process a set amount of data before the system crashes, that is your hard limit. Every single day, the system wipes the RAM clean and starts over.
You cannot carry over unused processing power from yesterday.
No, none of it.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. And it explains why we constantly feel so overwhelmed. We are trying to shove a terabyte of data through a processor that is strictly locked to a 24-hour capacity. And when the clock strikes midnight, whatever you didn't process just vanishes.
Exactly. The finality of that 24-hour boundary is deeply uncomfortable for the human brain to accept. We desperately want to believe in rollover minutes.
But there aren't any.
There are 0 rollover minutes in this mandate.
So we have this rigid, uncompromising titanium container. The boundary is set. But a boundary is completely useless if we don't know what to do inside of it.
True.
I mean, a blank computer screen doesn't accomplish anything just by being turned on, which pushes us into the second and final sentence of the source text. The actual directive, use them wisely.
It is a massive, jarring pivot.
Yeah.
The first sentence, we have 24 hours, is purely objective. But use them wisely throws the beginner straight into subjective morality and philosophy. By introducing the word wisely, the text creates a stark dichotomy.
It heavily implies that it is entirely possible to use the 24 hours unwisely.
Failure is absolutely on the table.
Failure seems almost inevitable.
It is highly probable. But the genius of the text really lies in what it leaves out. The author places the entire burden of defining the word wise squarely on the reader. There is no appendix attached to this mandate.
Right, there's no checklist.
No checklist of activities that qualify as wise, nor does it list prohibited activities that qualify as foolish.
So what does this all mean? Because honestly, that is where I hit a wall with this text. Wisely is a dangerously subjective trap for a beginner.
A trap.
Yeah, think about it. If this text is an official decree, a mandate with all the weight of a royal order, but it completely refuses to define the central metric for success, aren't we just flailing in the dark?
It can definitely feel that way.
Let's say I spend 3 of my 24 hours just sitting in a chair staring blankly at a white wall. In a hyper-productive modern society, that is considered a massive waste of processing power. It is peak foolishness.
Most people would agree with that, yes.
But what if staring at that wall brings me deep internal peace? What if it perfectly regulates my nervous system? Is that fulfilling the mandate or violating it?
Your frustration with that exact ambiguity is the intended psychological mechanism of the text.
Wait, really? The frustration is intended.
Oh, absolutely. When a term like wisely is left undefined, it triggers a process known as active sense-making.
Okay, let's unpack that. What exactly is active sense-making?
In cognitive psychology, when humans encounter a gap in information, especially regarding a direct instruction, it creates cognitive dissonance, mental discomfort. To resolve that discomfort, the brain is forced to project its own internal values onto the ambiguous text.
Ah, I see.
If the source material said, use them wisely by working 10 hours, exercising for 1 hour, and reading for 2, well, it would just be a schedule. You could follow it passively. You could be a robot.
Right, you could just check the boxes without ever asking why you were doing those things.
Exactly. But by leaving wisely completely blank, the text demands that you define your own value system. It holds up a mirror.
So back to my wall staring example.
Right. If staring at the wall brings you profound peace and aligns with your deepest need for mental health, then under your internal definition of wisdom, you have perfectly fulfilled the mandate.
But if I'm doing it to avoid something else?
Yes. If you are staring at the wall out of fear or avoidance or self-sabotage, then you have violated it.
That is heavy because it means the text doesn't judge the action itself. It forces you to judge the underlying intention.
It makes you the judge of your own trial. And this is where it gets even more complex for a beginner because our brains are actively working against us when we try to define what is wise. Have you ever heard of hyperbolic discounting?
I have, but let's break it down for the listener who might be new to the concept.
Sure. Hyperbolic discounting is a cognitive bias where we consistently choose smaller, immediate rewards over larger, long-term rewards. We fundamentally discount the value of the future.
We want the good stuff right now.
Exactly. So when the text says, use them wisely, your present self and your future self are going to have a massive argument over what wise actually means.
Oh, absolutely. My present self thinks it is incredibly wise to eat an entire pizza and binge watch television for 6 hours because the immediate reward is comfort and dopamine.
Right. But your future self, waking up the next morning, views that choice as a tragic waste of the 24-hour allocation.
Yeah, the regret is real. So the mandate to use time wisely isn't just a battle of defining your values. It is an active, daily war against your own neurobiology. It requires you to constantly negotiate between the comfort of right now and the architecture of tomorrow.
Which makes those 3 little words, use them wisely, feel incredibly daunting. And that leads us perfectly into the final phase of our deep dive. After dissecting the psychological weight of these 9 words, we really need to zoom out and look at the structural format of the source itself.
Minimalism.
Yes, we have to talk about the minimalism. Because as we mentioned earlier, there are thousands of books written about time management. There are entire software platforms, corporate retreats, and endless blogs dedicated to the 24-hour concept. So why does this source text explain it with barely enough words to fill a fortune cookie?
The physical form of the text is actually its most brilliant argument. The sheer brevity of the text mirrors the fleeting, unyielding nature of the 24 hours it describes.
And here's where it gets really interesting to me. When you hand someone a 1,000-page productivity book, you're actually giving them an escape hatch. Yes, you are giving them a meta-task.
A meta-task.
In psychology, a meta-task is a task you do about the actual work, to avoid doing the actual work. Reading a massive book on time management feels productive. You're highlighting paragraphs, taking notes, organizing a shiny new calendar system.
You feel like you are fulfilling the mandate.
But really, you are just procrastinating by reading about how not to procrastinate.
Exactly. A long text gives the brain a place to hide. It increases cognitive load with complex systems and acronyms, allowing the beginner to delay the actual difficult work of execution.
But this source text offers absolutely no hiding places. There's no fluff. There's no filler. It bypasses the brain's defense mechanism of overplanning.
It's like walking into a massive cavernous room, and there is only one tiny pedestal in the center with a single spotlight shining on it. You can't distract yourself by looking at the architecture or reading the little placards on the wall. You are forced to stare directly at the object.
And that object is your own responsibility. The moment you finish reading those 9 words, you are entirely out of text. You are immediately thrust back into the stream of your own 24 hours. The white space on the page around those 9 words represents the silence in which you must make your choices.
That is a profound way to look at it. Sometimes, stripping an idea down to its barest bones leaves a much deeper psychological impact than an exhaustive manual ever could, simply because it removes all the noise.
It demands immediate realization rather than prolonged education.
So, as we bring this deep dive in for a landing, let's recap the journey we just took through this beginner's thought experiment. We set out to understand the foundational 24-hour concept by unpacking a mandate that is barely a sentence long.
We started with the title, exploring how the word mandate shifts time from a passive, renewable resource into a binding, active assignment. It creates a necessary psychological pressure to break our default mode of sleepwalking through the day.
Then we looked at the absolute, uncompromising boundary of you have 24 hours. We realized that we can't negotiate with it like we do with physical space. It's a daily processor limit that completely ignores human inequality and constantly battles against our innate planning fallacy.
And finally, we confronted the heavy, subjective burden of using those hours wisely. We saw how the lack of a specific definition forces active sense-making, requiring us to confront our own internal values and fight the biological urge of hyperbolic discounting.
All of this delivered in a minimalist format that leaves us nowhere to hide.
Nowhere, Bo.
And this is where we have to connect the abstract back to your immediate reality right now as you are listening to us. The past 15 minutes or so that you just spent listening to this deep dive, that was a direct, irreversible withdrawal from your own 24-hour RAM allocation.
The processor has ticked down.
The mandate is currently active. So the most immediate question you have to ask yourself, using your own internal values, is, do you feel that by listening to this, you just fulfilled the mandate's requirement? Was this a wise use of your allocation?
Ultimately, you are the only judge of that. But I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to explore on your own. It's a conceptual puzzle piece that the author deliberately left out of the text, but it haunts the entire framework.
What's that?
Well, the text clearly issues a binding mandate, and a mandate, by historical and legal definition, must come from higher authority. It demands that you use your 24 hours wisely. But it leaves out one crucial piece for you to ponder. When your 24 hours are finally up, to whom exactly do you have to answer to prove that you use them well?